Good morning, friends, and welcome to the ULT meeting. Every Sunday we have a meeting at 11 a.m. for the discussion of a particular topic presented by a student of theosophy. The theosophical movement that started in the 19th century is still going on, but trying to expand its influence is still in the works. It seems that humanity does not welcome willingly that which will help it to move towards the spiritualization, towards solving problems that at every hand we have, and unification as a nucleus for setting up a brotherhood of men without creed, color, sex, affiliation. We're still working towards that end, and as these units all across the globe set themselves up and increase in numbers, only then, when we unite our effort, we will see a tremendous effect coming through that spiritual energy, because inherently every ULT has that energy within itself as an organization. Well, it really is not an organization because it's simply an association of students with the same aim, purpose, and teaching. HPB during the end of the 19th century makes a statement that the master's program was starting to have influence over the minds of the race. So this is still an ongoing progressive learning for us to do. What we are trying to do is bring about the change in the manas of humanity, moving from the kamic element into the Buddhic aspect of it. For that, we need the spirituality to be at the forefront, and then that energy then pulls everything towards the truth and what is correct to be done. Today's reading is from the Gita, chapter 5. Arjuna, at one time of Krishna, thou praisest the renunciation of action, and yet again its right performance. Tell me with certainty which of the two is better. Krishna, renunciation of action and devotion through action are both means of final emancipation, but of these two, devotion through action is better than renunciation. He is considered to be an ascetic who seeks nothing and nothing rejects, being free from the influence of the pairs of opposites. O thou almighty arms, without trouble he is released from the bonds forged by action. Children only, not the wise, speak of renunciation of action and of right performance of action as being different. He who perfectly practices the one receives the fruits of both and the place is nirvana, which is gained by the renouncer of action, is also attained by him who is devoted in action. That man seeth with clear sight, who seeth that the Sankhya and the Yoga doctrines are identical. But to attain to true renunciation of action without devotion through action is difficult, O thou almighty arms. While the devotee who is engaged in the right practice of his duties approacheth the Supreme Spirit in no long time, the man of purified heart, having his body fully controlled, his senses restrained, and for whom the only self is the self of all creatures, is not tainted, although performing actions. The devotee who knows the divine truth thinketh, I am doing nothing, in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving, sleeping, breathing, even when speaking, letting go or taking, opening or closing his eyes, he saith, the senses and organs move by natural impulse to their appropriate objects. Whoever in acting dedicates his actions to the Supreme Spirit and puts aside all selfish interest in their result is untouched by sin, even as the leaf of the lotus is unaffected by the waters. The truly devoted, for the purification of the heart, perform actions with their bodies, their minds, their understanding, and their senses, putting away all self-interest. The man who is devoted and not attached to the fruit of his actions obtains tranquility, whilst he who through desire has attachment for the fruit of action is bound down thereby. The self-restrained sage, having with his heart renounced all actions, dwells at rest in the nine-gate city of his abode, neither acting nor causing to act. The Lord of the world creates neither the faculty of acting nor actions, nor the connection between action and its fruits, but nature prevaileth in these. The Lord receives no man's deeds, be they sinful or full of merit. The truth is obscured by that which is not true, and therefore all creatures are led astray. But in those for whom knowledge of the true self has dispersed ignorance, the Supreme, as if lighted by the sun, is revealed. Those whose souls are in the Spirit, whose asylum is in it, who are intent on it, and purified by knowledge from all sins, go to that place from which there is no return. And now, today's talk, the path of action.
Thank you. Friends, Mr. Judge passes on the ancient direction to tread carefully the razor's edge between good and bad, as only a hairline divides the false from the true. What does he mean by that? Well, looking at the path of action, Krishna instructs Arjuna on the nature of action in chapter 4, which was the previous chapter to the one that was read by the first students. In the Gita, it says that renunciation of action and devotion through action are both means of final emancipation, and that the nature of action, of forbidden action, and of inaction must be well learned. Chapter 4 ends with Krishna's command on action, to arise and perform action. As the first student indicated, Arjuna, which is interpreted as the lower self, is a little confused. Say, hey, I'm supposed to act and I'm supposed to renounce. Give me some clarification, please. So that's how chapter 5 starts out, with Arjuna's request to Krishna, which is better, action or renunciation? So Krishna responds that the path of action is obscure and difficult to discern. Nature illustrates in the rising of the sun, very straightforward illustration here. In the night, when the moon's rays flood the scene, every object is covered with a romantic light. And when the luminary goes down, gets a little darker, it leaves everything in partial obscurity wherein many doubtful characters could conceal their identity or even masquerade for that which they are not. But in the sun's arising, all objects stand out in their true colors. The rugged bark of the oak has lost the softening color of partial day in moonlight. The weeds can no longer be imagined as flowers. The powerful hand of God of day has unveiled the character of all. Likewise, circumstances taking place in natural order will cause us all to stand forth for what we really are. So every one of us will have to stop and learn in the cave outside the hall of learning before we can enter there. Very true, that cave, with all its dark shadows and agitating influences, is an illusion of matter. But in matter shall we discover the nature of action and inaction. There we will come to admit that although the quality of action partakes of the nature of badness, yet it is nearer to the quality of truth than is that which we have called darkness, quietness, indifference, or generally thought of as inaction. Out of the turmoil of action may arise one who is a warrior for truth. So, bottom line is, we are here to learn, and we have to be engaged in action to learn, and in the process teach others. 1,000 errors of judgment made by an earnest student, it's said, and I believe this student believes it's very true, who with a pure and high motive, everything we hear about is related to motive. Very important word, very difficult to comprehend, even by, when we act ourselves. Sometimes it's very difficult for us to figure out whether we really acting for the self of all or for ourselves. So with a pure and high motive, if we strive to push on the cause, which is for the good of all, and we are better if we're making a mistake doing that than the outward goodness of those who are judges of their fellows. All errors made in good cause while sowing good seed will be atoned by motive. So we must not be judges of any person. The masters wish us to offer influence and light to all, regardless of what we may ourselves think. We are to sow the seed, and when it falls on stony ground, no blame attaches to the sower. So remembering then that the path of action is obscure and difficult to be discerned, let us beware of the illusions of matter. But it would be a grave mistake to think that by not acting we free ourselves from the consequences of action. Such would be a totally false view of the renunciation of action. The whole universe and everything that is action. Action comes from the very nature of spirit itself. It cannot be denied. One should never cease from not doing that which ought to be done. There is action in the very thought. Thought being the real plane of action, and that which includes any kind of action, or induces any kind of action. So without action there is no manifested life. While we live, we are constantly acting. There is not a moment when action ceases, whether the action is through a mind and a body, or after the terrestrial mind and body are laid aside for the time being, and functioning goes on in inner instruments and sheaths of the soul. That which gives direction to each person is the mind. Each individual is his own judge, jury, and executioner. For if his ideas are small and concerned only with the physical existence, then the motion given is in a wrong direction, personal and physical. If, however, we realize that such actions as we have accepted and made a basis for our action may not be true, we can change and enlarge them or reject them altogether. We, the higher self, have the power behind both body and mind to arouse change. We are the real mover behind the ideas and behind the will, the experiencer, the spirit itself that which looks out through our eyes, and that which senses through our organs. That is the same self in each and every instrument. Although we are spirit, divine, eternal, beginningless, and endless, we have created right or wrong ideas as to our own natures. We are the one reality behind all experiences, behind all planes of being, which are the temporary in their nature. Within the spiritual nature lie every possible power, force, and means for the creation of a more and more perfect instrument. Yet by our own actions, by our own creation of false ideals as their basis, we have made the conditions in which we find ourselves. We could get beyond troubles if we would cease to deal in every case with effects. That's what we see on the outer plane. So that's what we always react to. So we are constantly in a sea of effects, though. And we try to relate one effect to another without for one moment going back to the basis of causation of those effects, to this higher self, to the spirit within. In the spirit, no one of us differs. No human being, nor any kind of being, whether above man, or below man. The one spirit is in all is the perceiving power. It is the executing power. It is the creative, the preservative, and the regenerative power of every being. Thus, the declaration stating we are working toward seeding a seed of folks throughout the world who are devoted to universal brotherhood. We are connected, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. It's up to us to get this message across to ourselves and to each one of our fellow beings, because together we stand, divided we fall, as the old saying goes. Outside of us lies nothing but perception, but within us lies the power of realization of spirit itself, and of the powers which lie within that spirit. Our differences lie in our spiritual advancement and in our discriminative knowledge, according to our self-evolved nature of mind and body, an evolution which always takes place under law. So we're all a bit different, but more importantly, we are all the same. Under the same law, ruling from the minutest life to the highest spiritual being, that inherent law which is the power to act. Action is merely the execution of that spiritual law. We are learning all the time because we are acting all the time. In every fresh combination, the understanding and proper use of its points action of this points us onward and enables us to do still further, go still further into higher worlds and wider combinations. Each one of us is a sensitive instrument, the embodiment of everything there is in the whole of nature. For we have evolved from instruments of homogeneous substance through various differentiations and combinations of kingdoms and beings under the guidance of our spiritual progenitors. We have gone through the mineral kingdom, the animal kingdom, the vegetable, vegetable, animal, and so forth, and in various stages of human development before we became who we are now. We were concerned at least one time, not only with the beings above us and those of our own estate, but with all the beings below us in the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms, because we had that experience before. We all are interdependent, either as well among ourselves as well as the lower kingdom and the higher kingdoms. It can only be when we realize our own natures and act in accordance with them that we will fulfill the purpose of our life here, which in fact includes every being of every kind anywhere. We act upon them all to some degree in every thought and action of our own. And just as we affect them, so the effect flows back upon us through beings like us, and beings above us, and those below us, whether they're beings or vegetable or whatever. So the whole course of understanding the proper ideas from which we act lie within ourselves and not outside of ourselves. To imagine that we are here by chance, that there is no law, that there are accidents, that we are not responsible for ourselves being impinged upon while others are gratified of their desires is an error. We have brought ourselves into the present condition by doing similar things before. We have in other lives pursued a course that shut us out from knowledge of our own nature, and we are doing that today to a degree as we are immersed in this materialism. It's just something we have to be aware of every day. Is this really the truth, or is it something we're perceiving because of some personal desire? So we have acted through the inherent power within ourselves as to bring about a closure between our higher perception and our lives in the body. We have affected others in a similar way, and they in their turn come back to affect us and keep us on that plane of thought and action. Our thoughts are action more than our acts themselves. It is the way we think that produces action, and others are permeable to these thoughts of ours, be they good or bad. There is the faculty in man of identifying himself with whatever condition he finds himself in. That faculty is called in the Bhagavad-Gita ahankarara. Okay, that is also called egoism. That's as close as we can come to it in English. This is the Sanskrit term. As soon as we have involved in any set of circumstances, be it happiness or misery, we immediately identify ourselves with the prevailing condition, forgetting that there were other conditions before and that there will be other conditions in the future with which we may again identify ourselves. So we go on thinking that we are the body, that we are this nation, these events, this period of time. All these ideas are subversive of the understanding of our true natures, but they are eradicable because we ourselves created and maintain them. So we created the false ideas, and we maintain them as long as we allow it to continue. One of the ancient writers, writings, the Mundaka Upanishad, notes that the shaving process, that is, the elimination of all that is not the self. Nothing that we can see is self. Nothing that we can hear or smell or taste or know is self. The self senses all through its instruments, but is not any of these. We are not our body, we are not our mind, our lower mind, etc. Nor are we any of the experiences we have had, are now having, or will have. We are that which experiences, and are not any of the changes. We are none of the processes through which we go every day, from sleeping to waking, from life to death. According to universal law, we, our higher selves, or our real selves, never sleep. We never die. Sleep is just the reaction of the body, and when the body sleeps, we are still thinking and perceiving and experiences. And death is just another form of sleep. So we're in the dreaming state and the deep sleep state, states beyond, where we have full spiritual consciousness in these states beyond. So why do we bring back so little memory of the action of consciousness during sleep? So because our registering apparatus is of small caliber, Mr. Crosby says. That is, the physical brain, which is the register of our thinking, like everything else in our bodies, is formed from food, and so is constantly changing as our impressions change. It is because it becomes receptive only to the constant influence of our earthly thinking. But if while awake, we take a spiritual basis for our thinking, and that's what within our studies we're trying to do, cultivate that within ourselves, that is daily thinking which compels us in right action, with the recognition of all coming from the same source and proceeding toward the same goal, though the path varies with the pilgrim. The brain will become responsive to those other forms of consciousness during the sleep of the body. Then all that we know on the high planes of being can be carried through to a great degree expressed in the body. In all processes, something of change is going on. So action from the highest basis of thought institutes an action in the body itself and changes the very nature of the lives in our bodies, making them porous to the inner side of nature so that they finally become translucent and permeable to all higher and finer influences. There is a higher and inner side of any and every form that exists, mineral, vegetable, animal, human, or beyond the human. And as we become more universal in our modes of thinking and of action, we contact more fully that higher inner side. We raise ourselves higher, and we see the world as quite different from the one perceived when we were treading the path of mere terrestrial existence. We see what all false modes of thought and action have brought about, such as animosities, wars, divisions between individuals, pestilences, disease, cyclones, and earthquakes, noxious insects and animals. So the great errors of mental conceptions which darken man's mind keep him as an ever-acting being, creating the conditions which bring him his sorrows and disabilities. If there were no human being in the world who could ever harm another, there would be no harm. All harmful things would disappear. But even though there be harmful beings, and their nature cannot be changed, we can so change our own attitude that no harm can come to us from them. If harm comes to us, there must be harm in us. The yogi of the East can go into the midst of all kinds of harmful creatures unharmed because of his own harmlessness. When our thought is fixed on false ideas, it is apparent to the harmful creatures, and their instinct of so-called self-preservation moves them to attack us because they recognize a danger in us. The natures of those beings below us will be changed only by man. They cannot change themselves. We are here, as the Bible says, in charge of the beast of the field, if you will. That's what is being said here. So we, when we get to the lightening of the mind area, lightening of the mind, which is the definition that's here of manas, we have a lot of control in this world that we don't realize on a day-to-day basis. It's said elsewhere that we actually have an influence. We created those beasts of the field which are harmful. So to the degree we created them, we can help them become harmless. So it is the lives which we are using in our own bodies, themselves motion, action, which become the embodiment of beings in the various kingdoms. I'll just say, just said that. Because we have endowed them with our thought and action and given them direction as each moment passes back onto their own plane. We are their creators and their providence, or we delay their progress by misunderstanding our own natures and consequently theirs. What will be the future depends upon those who have the power to act in any state of matter. The civilization that now is has been created by ourselves. But behind all true progress, there must be a universal conception of spirit, mind, and action. This is generally missing in the world today. So we have to act. Every principle of our nature compels us to act. If we fear or fail to act in any given place where the situation calls for action, then we have acted in a wrong way, for we have missed an opportunity. And an error of omission is worse than an error of commission. This student's Christian father repeated that over and over again as we were coming up. Act then, but act for and as the self of all creatures. Renounce not action, but selfish interest in every thought and action. So with that, we'll close and open the meeting for discussion among us. Kim?
Okay. So, in terms of the path of action, I'm just trying to get this together in my head. What's been ringing in my mind the whole time we're talking is, as a man thinketh, so is he.
Exactly.
And the manifestations that we see around us on an everyday basis, whether it's personal or collective or just an observation, is mind in action being manifested.
Excellent summary. Keep going.
Being manifested.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so if we were to take or for instance, take a path of action, an individual, for our individual selves, that could radiate out into the family. It can radiate out into the community. It can radiate out further into our county or city, and because it is universal and it has to be manifested. We're constantly creating, and it has to be manifested, and we have to constantly. That's the movement.
Yes, and
the universal movement.
You use can sometimes. In this student's view, it does. Whether we, one way or the other, it does influence the community and the nation and so forth.
So it's.
We might not think so, but it does.
So it's very important as a personal responsibility to just take action on that. I don't want to say belief, but on that reality that we're all connected, and that this is how we stay interconnected through taking the path of action. Okay. Yay.
That's it. Maybe we should trace places. Okay. That is in a nutshell exactly what this student thought he said. In different words.
You spoke of action. I was thinking about reaction. And then you talked about motive. So when a person is acting and the action being, let's say if a person receives the results of your action and they react, in a way such that it's not favorable to you. I mean, whatever you had in your mind. So how should you, the actor, respond to the reaction of those that you were acting towards, and you think that it should have come out a certain way and it did not? So in that skill of the action that the Gita talks about, how does one keep his or her balance?
Well, that's always a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
When you started asking the question, I thought you were talking about karma, but it is karma, really. But getting down to the street level, it's the act of communication. If we think we're communicating with somebody, we have an audience, if you will, and it's a process, it's a learning process, is to learn how to reach that person, that audience, because each person has different experiences, although we're all from the same source. So this reaction going back and forth is, again, sort of you're an agent of karma, if you will, by reacting in a certain, well, you are an agent of karma in your reaction. This student's understanding. You can react in a positive way, so, oh, well, what I meant was, and try to clarify the message so that the person then has a better basis for reacting. Or maybe change your own thoughts, and maybe this reaction has shown you maybe that you needed to have a different point of view. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes, and as a follow-up, the Gita talks about a person being bound by the results of his or her action, in that if you are attached to the action instead of acting for the pureness of your motive, but if you have attachment for it, then the results, if the results are not what's favorable to you, then you could be depressed, despondent, etc.
Exactly.
And the other hand, if they are successful, then you become elated and joyful. But still, you are attached to it. So, how is it that this detachment from action? How does that come about?
It's tough on these Westerners. We Westerners have a particularly tough time with that, because it's very difficult to be detached from action, so that you're acting on the basis of the all. And so that's where we're getting to. Detachment from action. It's a learning process, in the body, in the current existence, to not be selfish, because all around us we're encouraged, if you will, to go out and try to earn more money, try to be better than the next person, etc., so we can move one step up the corporate ladder, etc. So detachment from action is saying, okay, you don't worry about what's going to happen to yourself. You do the right thing at the right time, and let the chips fall where they may. And you keep trying to do that. And you might get a negative reaction by doing that, and it helps you learn to okay, maybe I should do it a little different way, or maybe I should stand my ground, and because this is what we have to do as humanity. We have to be this way, and stay with your message. And there was another question or comment here.
Well, another way of looking at detachment is not wanting something in return.
Exactly.
Because most of our activity is an interactive process. I think the other student was questioning that interactive process, the other does not control your actions. As stated in the Gita, we're here to change ourselves, not the other. So if you are in control of your own thoughts, of your own speech and actions, regardless of what comes to you, if you stay in that core, in that center, then you are not reactive.
Exactly.
But you're using your reasoning powers and your spiritual center to deal with the situation that comes to you. So to stay calm, I think, is extremely important, as Mr. Judge says.
Go slow, be calm, go slow. The judge would often said, yes. And being calm, if you stay in your center, you are calm. When you get out of your center, that's when the agitation arises.
And that's me most days when I go to work. But I know my mom would tell me, you're different than your twin. She's the quiet one. She's very facetious and I'm a very introverted person, but when I get in situations, I become the opposite. And so over years, I created this attitude with dealing with people, and I'm a people person. I work well with people, but when I get in situations, I can be very aggressive, and so I had to work on that for a very long time, and it took years before I could see, like the priest was saying, how do you deal with people, that are one way, maybe that are hostile, that are different, that are, that require change, basically. But what I've learned over the years is that by me changing my consciousness and accepting and being grateful for these people, as idiotic as they are, being grateful, they are where they are in life. We're all at different stages. And just looking at people in that light and understanding them and working with them and just trying to blend instead of being so separate from them, it changed the reflection in my eyes. I changed. So when I looked at them, they looked different. They responded different. It's like that reflection in the mirror. It's not going to change. You change. Your reflection will change. And so when I go to work now, and this is just one of my jobs. I go to work now, and it's perfect. I mean, it's like these are the same people. All this time, it was me. I was the issue. I'm frowning at them like they were the issue, but they weren't the issue. It's just that I changed my reflection. I changed my consciousness towards them, and reflection just changed.
So we're in this cave of matter, and I think you're saying that in your own experiences.
Yeah.
We're in this cave of matter. We're seeing these images all around us, which may be true, but more likely, and this is experiencing are not true, not to the point, and we're separatists. Looking at that other person as a personality, you like or you don't like that person. Whether if we look at that person as a fellow creature who is going through experiences just like you and me, but maybe at a different level, and that we have an opportunity to do something. Karma has put that person in front of me to learn something from that person and appreciate that person. Then I think we're getting at what you're getting in having a more positive point of view and learning from them, and they learn from you.
Just another comment to the previous one on behavior when you feel aggressive or resentful of other people. When you sort of look into yourself, you feel that usually it comes from the feeling of rejection, that I am rejected. But once we go to the theosophical basis, that there cannot be rejection if there is no separation. If we're all part of all, just because we exist, then the whole notion of feeling of rejection is sort of insane, because we cannot be rejected if we're part of all.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start looking at with that perspective at other people, and not being fearful of your own rejection, then you see how they are rejecting themselves from fear of separation by doing something that you find not amenable to you. And just realizing that there is no separation, that no one can ever reject you just because you exist, really frees you.
Absolutely. Very, very good point of view there.
Just by way of comment, now, the ideal communist society speaks of, like the Three Musketeers, all for one and one for all. There's you own nothing, something like that.
Yeah.
You're working for the good of all. But over here in the capitalistic society, where all of your, from the time you leave out your door to go to work in the morning, it's everything is personal. You know, you got to go work for yourself. You know, this idea of you're competing. So it seems like the communist ideal system is more in touch with the theosophical idea of the one self of all, because the nation, everybody is working for the good of all. That's one thought, like for you to respond to. And secondly, in acting, there's this comment about the duty of another is full of danger. So in your enthusiasm to, let's say, help, because that's why we're here, to help and teach others, but why is that the case? The duty of another is, I mean, I might be getting it wrong, the words verbatim, but it says to do the duty of another is full of danger.
Full of danger.
Yeah.
Because you're taking away of an opportunity from another. If the presented something is presented to someone, they need to deal with that as best they can. That doesn't mean you and I can't help, but to try to take on their duty and do it for them, they're not learning anything. So you've taken away their opportunity.
Okay. So why is it danger to you or the other person? Where is the danger?
Danger because number one, they're not learning anything, and you're taking on their responsibility. So it's also said that if the masters take on you as a chela, they are taking on everything about you. So you taking on that duty, you're taking on a responsibility that you may not be prepared for.
Okay.
So it's fraught with danger.
Okay. So to the other part, now I've read in some of the theosophical literature that Jesus and those guys, they were socialists, but of a higher nature, not like the political deadbeat society of socialism without any spirituality behind it, but spiritual socialists in a way. So.
This student has often heard that communism is an ideal form of government, meaning that from each according to the means, to each according to and so forth. But are humans, we the people, ready for that kind of government? That's always the argument going back and forth. And this student remembers the book very clearly that he read in one night called Animal Form, and that goes on in human nature all the time. Human nature changed very slowly, but we are the ones that have to make that change and get it. And we can see it around us all the time that we are bringing in. These youngsters coming in. They are some of them got the idea real quick, and they're out there trying to help. Where the help is needed. We frequently talk about the child in Canada who saw that the wells were needed in Africa and got a movement going to get that job done. So of no benefit to himself, So that's the ideal that we're working toward, if you will. Real communism. That's terrible to say in this
so,
capitalistic society, but that's really what we need. I think the Karl Marx maybe was a little bit ahead of himself.
So then,
introducing that idea, but
are you saying that basically, okay, the human nature, excuse me, especially the lower mind, is selfish and personal, and
exactly.
Capitalism sort of promotes and perpetuates that personal idea, which tends to lead to selfishness and separateness.
Right. Leads to that. And now you can use capitalism also for a common good too, and you can use it very effectively in that way. But it's a question of motive in how you do it. And what you do is the way you do it, if you will. Sandra is next.
Just had to share a very short story of working with the socialist countries, speaking of this observation, and I had really enlightening thought. Because I started observing how they work, and I was amazed. First, they don't get to work until like 10 or 11. At 12, they go for lunch for 3 hours, and by 6, they all go and spend time with their families. And I was thinking, well, we'll never get anywhere here. And then I realized they're ahead of us, because we're doing similar tasks. And I couldn't understand, because they don't really work that hard. And then I started looking at what are we doing. Why we work 10 hours, and we don't have this long lunch, and we can sleep in, and we don't have time with the families. And I realized that they work maybe 5 hours, and 3 or 4 they spend lunching and sleeping and talking. But we work 10, of which only 3 we work, and the other we plot against each other. And we spend enormous time because we have incentives that maybe we can get more through that. And in most cases, we get marginally more, but we cannot sleep in, we don't have time with families, and we don't have a long lunch. So it's like a lose-lose game against ourselves.
You sound like a person that's been there and observed and also you've been there in many ways.
I have a similar statement to make. Ideally, what is proposed and what it really becomes in life, the philosophy, is not the same thing.
That's because of the Hall of Mirrors.
Because of what we do with the philosophy, how we apply it to daily life, which is what Sindra expressed.
Exactly.
And the other is this statement: where thought struggles to be free, the masters are there. The masters are there. So, in order for this philosophy of the wisdom of the ages to become reality, freedom is necessary.
Exactly.
Freedom of thought. And when you go to all those countries, this is not free. The democratic society is no longer free. But when you go to the other societies, there is suppression of thought. There is no freedom of thought. Without freedom of thought, we won't get anywhere either, because each one of us must choose. That is the prerogative of the thinking man. And until such time that we will be able to choose rightly, then we need government. But what has the freedom made of the government also? We have to ask ourselves and put the other statement in place. Ye come out and ye be separate. It doesn't mean that whatever is going on around us, we have to participate and accept it. If we don't agree with it, then our voice needs to be heard. That we don't agree with the government. No, it is not sabotage and it is not radicalism. What is going on around us is not correct way of leading a nation. And I'm specifically talking about the nonsense about the Wall Street. All the nations money being stolen, and now they're saying that 18 billion was stolen, and they recovered 1.5 billion to give it back to the people. Well, that somebody stole that money, and they need to be held responsible for it.
Bottom line is, are you talking about a democratic process? No, you're not. Okay, we have evolved. It was scary. You threw out some scary things. We are evolving from a democratic or republican process to one which is not, which where the few control in the back rooms, which is far more riskier than having a centralized government being. At least you can see what's going on. Whereas when 6 people in the world or in the country manipulate stuff, and that's not even the president. The president doesn't have very much power either. That's, to me, that's what you're talking about. That's not a democratic process.
1% owns the wealth.
Yeah. Okay.
We need to do something.
Theosophy in some aspects could be very metaphysical, abstract to a lot of people, students, but Lincoln said in explaining, Mr. Judge also, I think some of his articles that it won't overwhelm the understanding of a child. All right, so now you got here action, and then you got thoughts. Another word comes into play also, feelings. So now, in explaining all this high metaphysics to a child or somebody who's unfamiliar with theosophy in everyday words that they can relate to, thoughts, actions, and feelings. Those three words right there, I think, sums it all up. Meaning that's it in a nutshell. And then if you want to equate those to the higher triad, you got thoughts, manas, feelings, buddhi, and action, atma. You know, so there it is, right there. That Trinity. And if we can, sometimes we've been accused of being so metaphysical, abstract stuff like that. But in bringing it down to a street level and even down to a child level, thoughts, actions, feelings, right there.
Exactly. I mean, really, we're spending our lives for one thing, having the right motive, if you will, and that's what all this is all about. Keeping constantly in mind that we are all one, that we need to work toward that objective, and walk through this mukya and learn from the process and not become the mukya.
For that, I think in order to bring change about that is the correct change, in other words, that promotes unity amongst all children, is we need to teach them seed ideas, is I think what Mr. Judge and Crosby proposed, that if you give them the seed ideas and let that germinate within them, as they grow, they come to realize what it means and will work from the inside rather than be reactive to the social norm from the outside.
And I guess, can you say then that we're continuing to get these seed ideas through our meetings as we're having and discussing with each other? We're growing these seed ideas, if you will.
Well, karma and reincarnation.
For us, if we have a understanding of philosophy, we're much more likely to go out and put it to good use. If we really understand it, we will put it to good use.
Okay, karma and reincarnation, for instance.
Yes.
And when people say, but I don't remember my previous life, well, then you explain in simple terms that the consciousness is on a continuum. Whether we are in a physical body or out of it, the consciousness is still there. The individuality is there. But in the Western world, personality and individuality is not differentiated. The mind doesn't even come into it because the lower mind and the higher mind and how it works is not accepted by the scientific world. So we still have ground to cover. However, the intuitive scientists are definitely moving towards metaphysical aspects out of necessity, and even the proposed theories are being changed because, as you know, HPV said that hypothesis is not truth. But at least in the scientific world, the hypotheses change as there is more knowledge coming to the forefront. But that religious dogma that boxes the human mind in needs to be released. Until the new ideas can be put in, the human mind is going to be boxed in wherever it is. So it is these seed ideas that enable the human mind to expand its understanding, and its metaphysical reality then becomes understood on the physical plane. So karma and reincarnation, continuity of consciousness, that there is one unity, and that's the unity of all, as you explained in your talk, whether it is above the Deva world, whether it is the human kingdom, or all of those kingdoms below us that look up to us for guidance. We need to assume that responsibility and work with it. But our children are immensely important because they will be the future generations, and they need these seed ideas. Cooperative living, cooperative understanding, cooperative problem solving is a necessity for the future.
Yeah, this sort of this, what is based on this, what you said and what's in here. We sort of we've miseducated ourselves for thousands of years, to the point where, we are thinking that we are personalities, we are this body, we're here only once. That is totally out of sync with the basic philosophy. Even of religion, even of science is getting around to understanding that a lot. But you're talking about intuitive sciences, because everything leads in that direction. All of it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, if it's not within the laws of nature, then just get rid of it. So much of the baggage we carry around in science and religion and so forth, and our own growth, and it's a lot of baggage. So we need to pay a lot of attention to getting rid of that baggage. And I think when you talk about the intuitive scientist, in this student's understanding, that's a major step in the right direction. And scientists are coming around to what was presented to us in the 1800s, and is presented to us throughout the ages. It seems like maybe there's a ray of hope, even though we might think we're pretty backward right now. We're getting to the golden age. Some of us are already in it. Dupree, did you have another one?
No.
It's about time, isn't it? All right. We thank everybody for joining us today. Next week's talk is on. Got a program over there? I don't have one here. While that's being looked up, we're here at 4865A Cordell Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland, 2:30. You're invited to join us 11 o'clock every Sunday. This student knows that he gains a lot by coming to meetings and discussing these matters with his fellow students, and it's very important in our life to do that, to learn from each other. Next week's talk on January 19, which attributes persist from life to life. Talking about life to life, we're going to have more of it next week. Join us then. Thank you.